The storm's gift, the howling winds of Kepler 442c, carried death in their frozen breath, and Marcus Kane had learned to respect that truth during his 3 years of exile on this forsaken rock. His mechanical workshop, carved into the side of a crystalline cliff, offered the only warmth for hundreds of kilometers in any direction. The fusion generator hummed its familiar lullaby as Marcus tinkered with a broken atmospheric processor, his calloused hands moving with practiced precision despite the bitter cold that seeped through the reinforced walls. The storm had been raging for 2 days now, dropping the temperature outside to -60 Celsius. Even the hardy ice wolves had retreated to their deep burrows. Nothing should have been moving out there, which is why the sound that reached his ears through the screaming wind made him freeze mid-wrench turn dot. It was faint, almost lost in the tempest's fury, but unmistakably organic. A cry. No, 2 voices high-pitched, desperate, and growing weaker by the moment. Marcus set down his tools and pressed his ear to the thick polymer window, straining to hear above the storm's roar. There it was again, closer now, carrying notes of terror and exhaustion that transcended species barriers. Without hesitation, Marcus grabbed his thermal suit from its charging dock and began the familiar ritual of sealing himself against the planet's hostility. Triple-layered insulation, emergency oxygen, heated boots, and the heavy-duty scanner that would guide him back home if visibility dropped to 0. He'd done this dance before, usually to salvage crashed supply drones or repair weather monitoring stations. Never to answer cries in the night. The airlock cycled with a hiss, and the storm hit him like a living thing, trying to strip the warmth from his body and the breath from his lungs. His suit's heating elements kicked into overdrive as he activated the scanner, sweeping for any heat signatures beyond the workshop's thermal shadow. The display flickered through static, showing nothing but swirling white chaos. Then, just as he was beginning to doubt his own ears, 2 faint red dots appeared on his screen-weak signatures, fading fast, huddled together about 50 meters from his door. Marcus pushed forward through knee-deep snow, fighting the wind that seemed determined to turn him around. With each step, the signatures grew stronger, until he could make out 2 dark shapes collapsed against each other in a shallow depression, barely visible against the white. They were small, slender, and definitely not human. Their skin held a pale blue tint that wasn't entirely from the cold, and delicate ridged features spoke of a species he'd never encountered in his years traveling the outer colonies. Sisters, he realized, seeing the protective way the larger. One curved around the smaller, even in unconsciousness. Both were dying. Sanctuary Marcus didn't hesitate. Scooping up the smaller alien first, she couldn't have weighed more than 40 kilos. He carried her through the storm to his workshop. Her breathing was shallow, her skin cold as metal, but she was alive. The larger sister proved more challenging. She stirred as he lifted her, eyes fluttering open to reveal irises like polished amber that held more intelligence than fear, even in her delirium. "Safe," he murmured, though he doubted she understood. "You're safe now." The workshop's warmth hit them like a wall as the airlock sealed behind them. Marcus laid both aliens on the padded workbench he used for delicate repairs, quickly assessing their condition. Severe hypothermia, dehydration, and what looked like exhaustion bordering on starvation. The smaller one, barely more than a child by her proportions, had frostbite on her fingertips, while her sister bore older scars that spoke of recent hardships. Marcus's medical supplies were limited to a basic trauma kit designed for human physiology, but the fundamentals of treating exposure were universal. Gradual rewarming, fluid replacement, and calories. He activated portable heating units around the workbench and began the careful process of raising their body temperature. The older sister regained consciousness first, amber eyes snapping open with startling alertness. She tried to sit up, a protective arm immediately reaching for her smaller companion, but Marcus gently pressed her back down. "Easy," he said softly, showing empty hands. "I'm not going to hurt you. You're both safe here." She studied his face with an intensity that made him uncomfortable, as if reading something in his features that even he wasn't aware of. When she spoke, her voice was like wind chimes, melodic despite her weakness. "Zephyra," she whispered, touching her chest, then indicated her sister. "Novi." "Marcus," he replied, understanding. "And this is my workshop. You're on Kepler 442c. Recognition flickered in Zephyra's eyes, not of the planet, but of the kindness in his voice. She had clearly encountered enough cruelty to recognize its absence. As Novi began to stir, making soft sounds of distress, Zephyra switched to her own language, a series of musical tones that seemed to calm her sister immediately. Marcus worked through the night, monitoring their vital signs and adjusting the heating elements as their body temperatures slowly climbed toward normal ranges. He heated packets of nutrient broth, offering small sips when they were strong enough to swallow. Neither alien spoke again that first night, but he caught them watching him with expressions that gradually shifted from wariness to something approaching trust as dawn broke through the workshop's windows, painting the ice fields in shades of gold and pink. Marcus realized he'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. 2 alien refugees now depended on him for survival, and somewhere out in the galaxy, someone was probably looking for them. Trust in small steps the first week tested all of them in different ways. Zephyra remained guarded but cooperative, helping tend to her sister while studying Marcus with those unnervingly perceptive amber eyes. Novi, once past the immediate danger of hypothermia, revealed herself to be perhaps 16 in human equivalent years old, enough to understand their precarious situation, but young enough to adapt with remarkable resilience. Marcus learned their story in fragments, pieced together through Zephyra's limited but growing command of standard galactic and Nove's expressive gestures. They were ethery, the last survivors he'd ever meet from a species whose nomadic fleets had wandered between stars for millennia. The territorial wars had finally caught up with their peaceful people, and the orbital bombardment of their fleet had left perhaps a handful of survivors scattered across hostile worlds. "We ran," Zephyra explained one evening, her accent lending an otherworldly beauty to the simple words. "Ship failing, no fuel, no food, found this world by accident." Their ship went down in the wastes about 200 kilometers from here, Marcus realized. "You walked through that?" Zephyra's expression darkened. "Novi needed shelter, needed warmth. I heard about human settlements, thought perhaps—" She trailed off, but Marcus understood. She'd gambled everything on the hope that humans might show mercy to refugees, the transformation in both sisters over those first weeks was remarkable. Novi's natural curiosity emerged as her strength returned, and she began following Marcus around the workshop, fascinated by his repairs and modifications. Her species had an intuitive understanding of energy flows and mechanical systems that put his own training to shame. Within days, she was handing him tools before he asked for them, anticipating his needs with uncanny accuracy. Zephyra proved equally valuable, though in different ways. Her mathematical mind grasped the workshop's inventory systems immediately, and she began organizing his supplies with an efficiency that left Marcus embarrassed about his previous methods. More importantly, she slowly began to relax, allowing glimpses of the person she'd been before war and loss had hardened her. The first time Marcus heard her laugh, a sound like crystal bells in a gentle breeze, was when Novi accidentally activated an old service drone and sent it spinning across the workshop in confused circles. The moment felt sacred somehow, a sign that healing was possible even after devastating loss, but Marcus knew their sanctuary was temporary. His isolation wasn't voluntary. He was here because the colonial authority had deemed him. unsuitable for population centers after the incident on New Brisbane. The supply runs came every 3 months, and the next one was approaching fast. Soon, questions would be asked about increased power consumption and resource usage. That night, as the sisters slept on the improvised beds he'd constructed, Marcus sat before his communication console, staring at the emergency beacon he'd never used. One signal would bring help, medical supplies, proper food for his guests. It would also bring attention, questions, and very likely separation from the only family either sister had left. His finger hovered over the activation switch for a long time before he finally pushed it away. The choice the supply transport meridians. Edge broke through the planet's atmosphere exactly on schedule. Its pilot, a gruff veteran named Captain Torres, following the same approach vector he'd used for 3 years. Marcus watched from the workshop's observation port as the ship settled onto the landing pad he'd carved from the ice, its fusion thrusters melting the accumulated snow into steam clouds. "Stay hidden," he told Zephyra and Novi, who had retreated to the workshop's back chamber the moment the ship appeared. "This is routine, but if they find you ... Zephyra's hand found his arm, her touch gentle but firm. "You risk much for us already," she said. "We understand." Captain Torres emerged from his ship with his usual swagger, accompanied by someone Marcus hadn't expected, Lieutenant Colonel Reyes of Colonial Security, her uniform crisp despite the long journey. Marcus's blood went cold. Security didn't make social calls to exiles. "Kane," Torres called out, his voice carrying across the ice. "Got someone wants to chat with you." Marcus met them at the airlock, keeping his expression neutral despite the hammering of his heart. Reyes was younger than he'd expected, with the kind of sharp intelligence that missed nothing and forgot less. "Mr. Kane," she said, extending a gloved hand. "I'm investigating reports of an unidentified vessel that went down in this sector 3 weeks ago. Long-range sensors detected a brief distress signal before losing contact." "Haven't seen anything," Marcus replied, truthfully enough. "Weather's been hell lately?" Reyes nodded, but her eyes were already cataloging details: the increased power consumption readings on her scanner, the extra supply requests in his recent orders, the subtle signs of expanded habitation. "Mind if we take a look around?" "Strictly routine." Marcus had no legal right to refuse, and they all knew it. He led them through the workshop, watching Reyes' expression as she noted the additional sleeping arrangements, the expanded medical supplies, the carefully organized inventory. Systems that bore Zephyra's unmistakable touch. "Expecting company?" she asked mildly. "Man gets lonely out here," Marcus deflected. "Sometimes I prepare for guests who never come." It might have worked, except Novi chose that moment to sneeze from the back chamber, a distinctly non-human sound that resonated with harmonic frequencies no terrestrial throat could produce. Reyes's hand dropped to her sidearm as Torres stepped protectively behind her. "Step away from the door, Mr. Kane," Reyes ordered, her voice suddenly all business. "Colonial Security, by authority of emergency protocols, I'm conducting a search for undocumented alien presence." The back chamber door slid open before Marcus could comply, revealing Zephyra with her hands raised, amber eyes blazing with desperate dignity. Novi stood behind her sister, young face set with the same proud defiance their species had carried between the stars for centuries. "We are here," Zephyra said simply. "We surrender to your authority." Reyes studied them both, her expression unreadable. "Ethery refugees," she murmured, recognition flickering across her features. "The reports said there were no survivors." "Reports were wrong," Zephyr replied. We were the last of Fleet Singer Vox High's family group." The silence stretched taut as Marcus waited for the inevitable arrests, deportation to a processing center, separation. But when Reyes spoke again, Her voice held an unexpected note of something that might have been respect. "Mr. Kane, these individuals represent a significant security risk. Harbor protocols require immediate detention and processing." Her eyes met his. "However, given the remote location and the apparent stability of the situation, I'm authorized to conduct a full assessment before making final determinations." It wasn't freedom, but it was hope. Home Lieutenant Colonel Reyes spent 3 days at the workshop, conducting interviews, running medical scans, and filing reports that would determine the sister's fate. Marcus watched her carefully, trying to read the decision forming behind her professional mask. She spoke extensively with both Zephyra and Novi, asking about their knowledge of ethery technology, their understanding of human customs, their willingness to contribute to colonial society. On the final evening, as Torres prepared the meridians, edge for departure, Reyes sat across from Marcus at the workshop's small table, a cup of synthesized coffee steaming between her hands. "The official recommendation will be relocation to New Geneva Colony," she said without preamble. "Full refugee status, integration support, educational opportunities for the younger sister." Marcus felt his heart sink. And Marcus Kane maintains his current assignment with a notation regarding exemplary humanitarian conduct. Rees paused, studying his face. Unless, of course, there were compelling reasons to believe that alternative arrangements might better serve colonial interests. The hope in her voice was subtle but unmistakable. Marcus looked toward the back chamber, where Zephyra was teaching Novi to play chess using pieces carved from scrap metal. The sight of them heads bent together in concentration, Novi's delighted. Laughter as she discovered a clever move struck him with overwhelming clarity. "Zephyra has advanced knowledge of atmospheric processing and energy systems," he said carefully. "Her expertise could be invaluable in maintaining the outer colony infrastructure. And Novi, she has an intuitive understanding of mechanical systems that would take human students years to develop." "Isolated postings can be challenging," Reyes observed. "Lonely work." "Not anymore." Reyes smiled, the first genuine expression Marcus had seen from her. "I thought you might see it that way. The paperwork's already filed, contingent on all parties' consent. Guardian status with colonial authority oversight and regular progress reports." That night, after the ship had departed and the ice fields had returned to their eternal silence, the three of them sat together in the workshop's warmth. Novi had fallen asleep against Marcus's shoulder while he read aloud from one of his technical manuals her favorite bedtime stories, as it turned out. Zephyra worked quietly on a new project, her skilled fingers assembling components with mechanical precision. "You could have let them take us," she said without looking up from her work. "Would have been safer for you." "Safety's overrated," Marcus replied. "Besides, someone needs to teach you how to properly organize a workshop." Zephyra's laugh was like music in the close space. "Human workshops are chaotic, inefficient. No wonder your species requires so much maintenance." "Our species," Marcus corrected gently. "We're family now, remember?" Outside, the wind still howled across the ice. Fields of Kepler 442c, carrying its cargo of crystalline snow and bitter cold. But inside the workshop, warmth prevailed, not just the heat of fusion generators and thermal units, but the deeper warmth of beings who had found, in the most unlikely circumstances, exactly what they'd been looking for without knowing they were searching for it at all. The last of the ethery had found their home among the stars, and the exiled human had discovered that redemption sometimes came in the form of two alien sisters who trusted him enough to stay when they could have run. In the morning, there would be work to do, atmospheric processors to repair, supply inventories to manage, and progress reports to file. But tonight, there was only this: a makeshift family gathered in the light and warmth, proving that in a galaxy full of darkness and cold, sometimes the smallest acts of kindness could shine brighter than any star.